Hello, everybody, and welcome to day 9 of 12 Nights of a Christmas Carol. Can't believe after tonight we only have 3 more nights. Wild. How is that possible? Yeah, I guess that's true. Uh, I may still try to get some children's stories in before actual Christmas, but we'll see. So this will be our last night with the ghost of Christmas Present, and I'm gonna miss him. I love that guy. Last we left off, we were with Scrooge's nephew, and we will actually jump back in with them again. And it gets a little creepy in this section, I'm not gonna lie, guys. So brace yourselves. I would say this is one of the most disturbing scenes at the end of this chapter, so yay. Oh man. But they didn't devote the whole evening to music. After a while, they played at forfeits, for it is good to be children sometimes, and never better than at Christmas, when its mighty founder was a child himself. Stop! There was first a game at blind man's buff. Of course there was. And I no more believe Topper was really blind than I believe he had eyes in his boots. My opinion is that it was a done thing between him and Scrooge's nephew, and that the ghost of Christmas Present knew it. The way he went after that plump sister in the lace tucker was an outrage on the credulity of human nature. Knocking down the fire irons, tumbling over the chairs, bumping up against the piano, smothering himself among the curtains. Wherever she went, there went he. He always knew where the plump sister was. He wouldn't catch anybody else. If you'd fallen up against him, as some of them did, on purpose, he would have made a feint of endeavoring to seize you, which would have been an affront to your understanding, and would instantly have sidled off in the direction of the plump sister. She often cried out that it wasn't fair, and it really was not. But when at last he caught her, when, in spite of all her silken rustlings and her rapid flutterings past him, he got her into a corner whence there was no escape, then his conduct was the most execrable. For his pretending not to know her, his pretending that it was necessary to touch her headdress, and further to assure himself of her identity by pressing a certain ring upon her finger and a certain chain about her neck, was vile, monstrous. No doubt she told him her opinion of it when, another blind man being in office, they were so very confidential together behind the curtains. Oh my. Scrooge's niece was not one of the blind man's buff party, but was made comfortable with a large chair and a footstool in a snug corner where the ghost and Scrooge were close behind her. But she joined in the forfeits and loved her love to admiration with all the letters of the alphabet. Likewise, at the game of how, when, and where, she was very great, and to the secret joy of Scrooge's nephew, beat her sisters hollow, though they were sharp girls too, as Topper could have told you. There might have been 20 people there, young and old, but they all played, and so did Scrooge, for wholly forgetting, in the interest he had in what was going on, that his voice made no sound in their ears. He sometimes came out with his guess quite loud, and very often guessed right, too. For the sharpest needle, best Whitechapel, warranted not to cut in the eye, was not sharper than Scrooge, blunt as he took it in his head to be. The ghost was greatly pleased to find him in this mood, and looked upon him with such favor that he begged like a boy to be allowed to stay until the guests departed. But this, the spirit said, could not be done. "Here's a new game," said Scrooge. "1 half-hour, spirit only one." It was a game called Yes and No, where Scrooge's nephew had to think of something, and the rest must find out what, he only answering to their questions yes or no, as the case was. The brisk fire of questioning to which he was exposed elicited from him that he was thinking of an animal, a live animal, rather a disagreeable animal, a savage animal, an animal that growled and grunted sometimes, and talked sometimes, and lived in London, and walked about the streets, and wasn't made a show of, and wasn't led by anybody, and didn't live in a menagerie, and was never killed in a market, and was not a horse, or an ass, or a cow, or a bull, or a tiger, or a dog, or a pig, or a cat, or a bear. At every fresh question that was put to him, this nephew burst into a fresh roar of laughter, and was so inexpressibly tickled that he was obliged to get up off the sofa and stamp. At last the plump sister, falling into a similar state, cried out, "I have found it out. I know what it is, Fred. I know what it is." "What is it?" cried Fred. "It's your Uncle Scrooge," which it certainly was. Admiration was the universal sentiment, though some objected that the reply to "Is it a bear?" ought to have been yes, inasmuch as an answer in the negative was sufficient to have diverted their thoughts from Mr. Scrooge, supposing they had ever had any tendency that way. "He has given us plenty of merriment, I'm sure," said Fred, "and it would be ungrateful not to drink his health. Here's a glass of mulled wine ready to our hand at the moment, and I say, Uncle Scrooge." "Well, Uncle Scrooge," they cried. "A Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to the old man, whatever he is," said Scrooge's nephew. "He wouldn't take it from me, but may he have it, nevertheless. Uncle Scrooge." Uncle Scrooge had imperceptibly become so gay and light of heart that he would have pledged the unconscious company in return and thanked them in an inaudible speech if the ghost had given him time. But the whole scene passed off in the breath of the last words spoken by his nephew, and he and the spirit were again upon their travels. Much they saw, and far they went, and many homes they visited, but always with a happy end. The spirits stood beside sick beds, and they were cheerful, on foreign lands, and they were close at home, by struggling men, and they were patient in their greater hope, by poverty, and it was rich, in almshouse, hospital, and jail, in misery's every refuge, where a vain man and his little brief authority had not made fast the door and barred the spirit out, he left his blessing and taught Scrooge his precepts. It was a long night, if it were only a night, but Scrooge had his doubts of this, because the Christmas holidays appeared to be condensed into the space of time they passed together. It was strange, too, that while Scrooge remained unaltered in his outward form, the ghost grew older, clearly older. Scrooge had observed this change, but never spoke of it until they left a children's 12th night party, when, looking at the spirit as they stood together in an open place, he noticed that its hair was gray. "Are spirits' lives so short?" asked Scrooge. "My life upon this globe is very brief," replied the ghost. "It ends tonight." "Tonight!" cried Scrooge. "Tonight at midnight. Hark! The time is drawing near." The chimes were ringing the 11:75 at that moment. "Forgive me if I'm not justified in what I ask," said Scrooge, looking intently at the spirit's robe, "but I see something strange and not belonging to yourself protruding from your skirts. Is it a foot or a claw?" "It might be a claw, for the flesh there is upon it," was the spirit's sorrowful reply. "Look here." From the foldings of its robe, it brought 2 children, wretched, abject, frightful, hideous, miserable. They knelt down at his feet and clung upon the outside of its garment. "Oh, man, look here! Look down here!" exclaimed the ghost. They were a boy and a girl, yellow, meager, ragged, scowling, wolfish, but prostrate, too, in their humility. Where graceful youth should have filled their features out and touched them with its freshest tints, a stale and shriveled hand like that of age had pinched and twisted them and pulled them into shreds. Where angels might have sat enthroned, devils lurked and glared out menacingly. No change, no degradation, no perversion of humanity in any grade through all the mysteries of wonderful creation has monsters half so horrible and dread. Scrooge started back, appalled. Having them shown to him in this way, he tried to say they were fine children, but the words choked themselves, rather than be parties to a lie of such enormous magnitude. "Spirit, are they yours?" Scrooge could say no more. "They are man's," said the spirit, looking down upon them, "and they cling to me, appealing from their fathers. This boy is ignorance. This girl is want. Beware of them both, and all of their degree, but most of all beware this boy, for on his brow I see that written which is doom, unless the writing be erased. Deny it, cried the spirit, stretching out his hand toward the city. Slander those who tell it ye, admit it for your facetious purposes, your factious purposes, and make it worse, and bide the end. Have they no refuge or resource? Cried Scrooge. Are there no prisons? Said the spirit, turning on him for the last time with his own words. Are there no workhouses? The bell struck 12. Scrooge looked about him for the ghost, and saw it not. As the last stroke ceased to vibrate, he remembered the prediction of old Jacob Marley, and lifting up his eyes, beheld a solemn phantom, draped and hooded, coming like a mist along the ground toward him. Ooh. I tell you what, I really forgot how much I love the sections about the Ghost of Christmas Present. He is dropping those hard truths. Crazy. Also makes me regret that I didn't read at least part of this to my students this year. Who's got that time? But, oh my goodness. All right, so I know that was a shorter one this evening. However, I think the last 3 sections are, I don't know, I think they're decent sized sections. Who knows? Listen, if you've been listening this long and actually listening to the entire videos, you are a delight, and I love you. I don't care who you are. I love you. I think you're wonderful. Gosh, okay, well, so tomorrow night we will enter Stave 4, which is the last of the spirits, the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. A little bit spooky, but I still don't think even the last section is creepier than that last bit with the 2 children, Ignorance and Want, creeping out of the Ghost of Christmas Present's robes. No wonder they leave that out of so many versions. So, on that note, I every night I debate. I have a list of my charities that I want to highlight, and I always debate, which one tonight. So I think tonight I want to highlight a charity that is a nonprofit that is very close to my heart. For reasons that may seem strange. It is the Order of the Good Death. Yes, you heard that right. The Order of the Good Death. They are an organization that works to demystify and destigmatize death, with the understanding that it is one of the universal human conditions, one that all of us will face at some point in our lives. And they are working to create a more death positive future. Not death positive in that death is fantastic, but death positive in that, if it's going to come, we should have the resources to make it a good death, whatever that means for you. Different cultures have lots of different ideas of what that means. And so it's an education organization. They do a lot of advocacy for things like eco burials, green burials. A lot of what they do is just helping people to know what their options for end of life care are. And I, again, as morbid as that sounds, I have a lot of respect for people who can approach mortality with that kind of lens of acceptance is not the right word, but if we need to face our mortality, let's not do it from a place of fear. Let's do it from a way that honors our lives and respects everybody's wishes. I don't know. I'm doing a very bad job explaining it. You should check out their website. It's orderofthegooddeath.com. You may be familiar with one of their founding members, Caitlin Doty. who had a YouTube channel, or still does, for a long time, called Ask a Mortician. She's worked in the death industry for a while. She's got a couple books. She is lovely. I adore her, and she is a big part of that organization. She has a podcast with a couple other women called Death in the Afternoon, and yeah. So anyway, if you'd like to learn more about the work that they're doing, in addressing a lot of the inequalities, the racial injustice that exists, the economic injustices that exist in especially this country's death industry, check out their website, and it'll do a much better job explaining it than I can. So again, that is orderofthegooddeath.com. And yeah, thank you again for joining, and hopefully you'll be back tomorrow night, and we'll meet the ghost of Christmas yet to come. Ooh. On that note, good night.